Hey, what's going on, everybody? We are back, and I have a special guest. Man, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody know what organization you're part of.
Sure. Thanks for having me. By the way, my
No
name is
problem.
my name is Amanda Cumming, and I am with Actify Chat. And you can check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Actify Chat or Actify Press actually.
Oh, well, see, that's confusing. You got to make sure you clarify that because I was going to type in Actify Chat, but so yeah, you can find their YouTube channel at Actify Press.
Mhm.
And where can everybody follow you? Just really quick.
Oh, you can follow me personally on YouTube at Penned Activist on not YouTube but on Twitter, and you could also follow the actual Actify Chat on Twitter as well at Actify Chat is the handle.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, Amanda, I'm sure that you have been keeping up with, everything that's been going on with these Russian indictments. I know that you're on Twitter probably 28 hours out of the day. I'm literally getting updates from you every minute. But so, what do you think about the Russian indictments? The third, 12 that recently got indicted? How do you feel about that?
Personally, I obviously these, if they did have any type of handle or hand in what they are, I guess, indicted on, they will never come come to justice, if you want to call it that, by any
Yeah.
means. This is just kind of a show, if anything.
Yeah.
Uh, that's kind of like the broader, my broader view on the actual indictments in and of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's even if they weren't guilty, considering the corruption that we've seen in our Justice Department, our federal Justice Department, DOJ, over the last few years, even if you were innocent, would you come anyway?
No.
I mean, how do you, I mean, Julian Assange is innocent. He's been exonerated by the international community time and time again. There's a reason he still isn't leaving the embassy.
Right.
Did you get a chance to check out the indictment?
I checked out a little bit of it, but I've been honestly so busy this weekend I didn't get a recap it at all.
Well, so just to give you a brief overview, they indicted 12 Russian intelligence officers who were supposedly connected to a like a little, I guess, cyber group. But they're third party. So I don't even know. According to the indictment, they're still intelligence officers, but for all I know, they could actually be like retired officers or not even connected to the government anymore, and they may be working for them through like a military contract.
Right.
I don't know, or like a third party contract, like a government contract. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that either, but and so they actually try to say that these were the people who created Gucci for 2.0. So what they're trying to do is link them and say that these are the ones who created Gucci for 2.0 despite knowing everything that we already know about Gucci for 2.0. And obviously people are kind of like, yeah, this is a show. It's really coincidental that Trump's going to meet with Putin and all of a sudden these indictments drop. But also it's just the simple facts that Gucci for 2.0 has already been proven to have been born and transferred the files in the United States of America, but they're trying to claim now that the third party was operating out of Russia. So what do you feel about that? Like, do you think that is like legitimate? You feel like it's a smokescreen? What do you think?
So I think that everybody wants to assign blame to something, right? And honestly, the whole broader picture of this Russian investigation and now finding people within Russia that are never going to come to justice is further is giving, and I kind of dim bash a lot. I do bash on the Democratic Party. It's just giving them an excuse to never take responsibility for their own actions and their own failures,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
ultimately this comes down to these emails, right? These
Mm-hmm.
they're saying that these are the guys that hacked into the DNC servers and obtained these emails, which honestly should have been public already.
Yeah,
They should have been public. They were these guys were essentially offering a public service, even though I guess they're in a private corporation. You know, I know that if you're a governmental employee, your emails could get through FOIA requests, could
Mm-hmm.
get requested and reviewed and seen and read by anybody.
That's actually very true. I didn't think about that, but that's true.
And I believe that these people should have been considered governmental employees.
Yeah, Hillary at the time, she was technically a government employee. A lot of the email that got published, she was a government employee.
So under that information, we can do a FOIA request today and obtain that same information.
Yeah, I think actually you're right, because I mean, when you think about it, a lot of emails that should have been marked secret and top secret were not. And therefore, with the Freedom of Information Act request, they would just literally take the emails that are not marked with any, specific identification, whether it's classified, top secret, whatever, and they would just give them to the public. And that would have been, which actually makes it really weird that they were having trouble finding those emails.
Right. Yeah.
Because literally anybody could have gotten them. And and that's why Hillary went out of the way to destroy a lot of those emails, in my opinion, because they were really easy to get. I don't know if Hillary, I know she's kind of old, but I'm sure she's been around long enough to know that you can pretty much get anything back from the internet, especially given the NSA's capabilities, and it's their fault, right? They expanded the police state. They expanded the ability for the government to dig deep as they want to get whatever they want to, the moment it touches the internet. So it's kind of their fault. But no, I do agree with you. There is a total lack of accountability. It's so interesting to me how there's this crowd of the super hardcore neoliberals who always say we should move on, we should move forward, we should worry about 2018 and getting Trump out, or 2020 and getting Trump out. And I'm like, but y'all still talking about the loss in 2016, and y'all have literally a whole special investigator dedicated to complaining about what happened in 2016.
Right.
Like,
so here's the thing with the special investigation and the special investigator, that from my position, I think that they should allow him to do his job and continue. But we don't need any other shows of I guess aggression or shows of this and that. Just let them play out their job. If you want to move forward, then move forward, and just say, and don't refer back to the investigation, because honestly, we don't know what it's going to take. We don't know what it's going to present us. In fact, it seems if anything, there's some more money issues there than anything that had nothing to do with the initial scope of the investigation, which was Russian collusion and Russian hacking of these emails, which, again, like I said, I think that these emails should have been public in the first place.
Yeah.
And all it did was show us that they were corrupt, right? Which,
reaffirmed that they were corrupt anyway,
right.
So I did for the longest time, until the situation with Andrew McCabe started unfolding. I was like, whatever, if they want to do the investigation, let them do it, because it's not going to amount to anything. Like, I already knew, paying attention as long as I have, I kind of already knew where it was going to go. Now, here's where it got a little dicey. And I was like, actually, now it has officially become a waste of taxpayer dollars. And now it looks like they're trying to undermine the office of the President of the United States of America. Even though Trump is currently occupying it, I'm in that camp of people, probably from being in the service. But they always tell you have to salute everybody. If you're enlisted, you have to salute every officer you see. And it's not, even if you don't like that person, because you're not saluting that person, you're saluting that office. And it's the same thing with the President of the United States, or the office of the President of the United States. It doesn't matter who's sitting in that seat. If you're perpetuating lies based off of biases to further your own political agenda, or even further your own position in a particular administration, like we can kind of tell is going on right now, then that's technically a conspiracy to undermine the office. That's a lot of charges, like in court, right? That's why they're going through these Senate Judiciary hearings, they're going through these House Intelligence hearings, and because these are serious allegations.
Right.
And the moment that Robert Mueller was even brought into like power based off of Comey's firing, right? That was what he was originally here for. And people forget that because it's been so long. He was fired, or he was brought in to investigate Trump's firing of Comey in relation to the Russiagate investigation. He was never, however, brought in to separately investigate whether or not Russia at all had anything to do with hacking the 2016 elections. First of all, they didn't hack the election. I don't know what the hell that means. But I can say pretty confidently, yeah, they probably did try to influence the election. And I can say pretty confidently that so did Israel. And I can say pretty confidently that so did Saudi Arabia, and Yemen, and Jordan, and all the UAE. I mean, we can go on for days, really, about all the superpowers that try to influence the outcome of our elections, because our elections determine the outcome of their livelihood. So, but to pretend as if Mueller was ever supposed to be there to actually link Trump and Russia together, I feel like it's laughable at this point, because he's bringing indictments he doesn't even have really the power to do within the capacity of which he was assigned. I mean,
they did give him the power to just do whatever he wanted, essentially. I mean, they didn't restrict that. They didn't limit it to just.
They didn't restrict it, but I think they could challenge it.
In Russia. But they could challenge it, and I think some of them are challenging it as well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if people around Trump did do anything wrong, this would help clear this, start clearing out that swamp that people.
The problem is they won't investigate, because I think you're referring to like any violation under the emolument clause, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they won't bring him down for that, unfortunately.
Here's the thing: is like as soon as we allowed money to influence our political process, it opened and including foreign money, it opened the floodgates. It did.
Yeah.
And there isn't a restriction on private companies at all from giving to anybody.
Yeah.
Through super PACs. And you don't even have to be accountable to that super PAC and say that, you are associated with that super PAC.
And you can just literally donate all the money you want to a bunch of different super PACs. And then.
Exactly. And so it seems like if you are interested, if Democrat and Republicans, if you're truly interested in assuring that there is no more foreign money or foreign influence on our personal elections, you have got to change you have got to tackle campaign finance laws.
Yeah, absolutely. And just really, we need to start challenging the quid pro quo behavior overall, because like you said, they should. If you were, and I love the way Ocasio actually put this whenever she got interviewed. She said they asked her, would you push for an impeachment for Trump? Because they were just trying to trap her into saying that she was anti-Trump, because out of everything that she says, the only things that ever seem to make headlines is the one sentence she was forced to say about Trump in whatever interview. But she said, she was like, I would support an impeachment, but only under the emolument clause, because I do believe that there's some quid pro quo behavior, and there has been plenty of examples of quid pro quo behavior and self-enrichment, using his office to essentially enrich his brand. I don't think anybody can deny that. If you do, then I don't know what the hell to tell you. You just got to go read something. But they would never. The reason that Trump is okay with it, and he knows he can get away with it, is because Obama got away with it, and George Bush got away with it, and Clinton is still getting away with it, and George Bush Sr. got away with it, and Ronald Reagan, he was a puppet, but he probably got away with it too. I mean, the list really, LBJ got away with it. He became a billionaire off of Vietnam. Like almost everybody in Congress and the Senate are all getting away with it right now. If you tried to bring these charges under the emolument clause and impeach Trump, Trump is then going to be the most petty person ever, as he goes on Twitter and starts listing off every single congressman and senator who has conducted any type of quid pro quo behavior, because he knows all of them, and we'll watch the dominoes fall. And that's not going to happen. I don't think they're going to do it.
Because I think that, if you bring up charges with him and the emolument clause, which honestly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or I guess I'm just asking, does that apply to members of Congress, or is that just the president?
Oh, anybody can be impeached.
No, on the emolument clause.
No, anybody can be impeached. So
Okay,
an impeachment is like the
so
investigative process before you send them to Senate and see if you can actually remove them.
So let's like if it leads up to the impeachment of the president of the United States, then impeach everybody who's guilty of this, so that
Yeah, they would have to.
start.
So here's the messed up part about that: they would have to vote to impeach themselves.
Yeah, they would. They would absolutely. But you know what?
Um,
We can also vote to hopefully impeach them by getting them the fuck out of office.
Yeah, that's also the alternative. That's what's so important. I don't know if you're familiar with the case Laverne versus U.S. House of Representatives. The House of Representatives right now is supposed to have over 6,000 representatives, according to how the House was set up. There was an executive order pushed through that it is actually unconstitutional, and it limited the amount of people in the House of Representatives. We're also supposed to have more delegates in each individual community, like that then decide how to vote for. The delegates decide how the representatives are supposed to vote, and then the representatives obviously vote in the state representatives, and then you're supposed to echo the sentiments of your state. That's how it's supposed to go. Now, it's a lot harder to hold people accountable when they have, and also it's also harder to pay people off, or not as hard to pay people off when there's only 400. Now imagine if there was 6,000. You think that GE and Ford and all and these big banks could pay off every single congressperson and senator, especially as the population start getting larger and larger? At that point, yeah, maybe half of Congress is taking money, or half of Congress is violating the emolument clause. But as long as a little bit more than half indict the other half, then you're perfectly fine. It doesn't matter. You get what I'm saying? That's what's so important about that particular case. It's in the Supreme Court right now, and it's proving, in my opinion, day in and day out, how important our representation or lack thereof is. And I feel like there's a serious lack of representation across the board for all of us.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that lack of representation helps people be either complacent or unengaged with the process, because the representation is so far out of reach, and is so far out of people's hands because of the fact that we only are represented by such a few amount of people. So I think it intentionally creates a problem.
Yeah, that was the goal. Right. It was to literally take as much of the power out of Congress, because really, how much power do they really have? If we want to get to the like the nitty gritty of it, they have a little power, but like when your financier can just pay an opponent to come out and throttle you, and until very recently, it was like a 97% of all elections were determined by who made the most money. We're actually doing much better now, believe it or not. We're at 91%, and it's getting lower every year. So that's actually a good thing. But when even still, that 91% of elections are determined by who has the most money in their account, it makes it a little hard for you to want to do everything according to what the people need versus what your financiers want. And so at that point, you do lose a little bit of power, especially when we know about voting machines and how rigged they are. And we know about how people can just literally destroy ballots and nothing matters.
Yeah, that's the problem with accountability again. We have an issue, and then we have, again, because we are so unengaged with the process, again, in the last presidential election, only about 50% of eligible voters or people that were registered to vote voted. Because, would you vote if you knew that nobody would be accountable if something happened or something went awry?
Yeah, I feel like that's a big deal. But I feel like it's a big deal because I feel like when we just don't vote, we say, no, I'm not going to vote. I don't feel like voting. I plan it's not going to count. Well, good. That means you should be voting all the more, because, well, the truth of the matter is, if you don't vote, then that is another vote that went either way that we can't account when we're holding people accountable. Right. So the only reason that we could feel that Bernie was cheated very clearly was because of all of us who voted for him. And we're like, well, what the hell? If all of us voted for him and like none of our friends voted for Hillary, then how the hell how is she winning?
Yeah.
You know? And I'm pretty and I have a pretty diverse following. And I mean, the people who are now conservatives or they were then, when they voted for Trump in the general, a lot of them were voting for Bernie in the primary, and they would have voted for Bernie in the general if he had won. A lot of people were supporting Bernie, even the ones who were like, well, I guess I'll vote for Hillary if I have to in the general, but they voted Bernie in the primary. And so, and you start seeing things like, wow, you would have never known your registration got switched or you were dropped from the rolls if you didn't go vote.
Right.
So if all 100,000 of those people would have said the system is corrupt, we're not going to participate, we would have never had that lawsuit that almost came about. But eventually, I guess they took care of it in New York. I don't really consider it accountability, but they at least admitted that they were cheated, that those people were dropped from the ballots. The attorney general did. And so, but we would have never known that if those people did not participate.
Now that we know that, I just want to know, like, again, the accountability issue. Like, we can't go back and redo it. There's no redos. We can't fix the problem because, and for all intents and purposes, Bernie probably would have beat Trump in the general. I mean, there was a lot of data to support that.
No, not probably. He definitely would have, because he would have taken he would have taken Michigan, he would have taken obviously all the blue states, and he would have taken Michigan and definitely Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, and probably Florida. So, and those are really three or four of the states that put the nail in the coffin on Hillary. Like, it just made him untouchable at that point.
Right, and so we could see this, but again, the primaries were rigged in favor of Hillary Clinton. There's no doubt in my mind about that. That they have admitted that in certain states. And the fact that we can't go back and say, okay, well, now we have to redo the elections and put Bernie there as the primary, candidate. We can't do that. We have to wait all the way until 2020, and he may not even run, or he may not even be the primary,
he's running. He's definitely running. Forward. If he's alive and breathing at that point, which it sounds like he ain't going nowhere no time soon. From everybody that I know that's interacted with him recently, they said that dude is he got more energy than I do, and I'm only 29 years old. I don't know how he's always on the move like that. But for all intents and purposes, it looks like he is running. There's a couple of other people who have told me that we have maybe two other progressives that are running as well, popular ones, but I think that it's good that he runs, and I know they're going to try to cheat him, right? So I want to be very clear about that, people. But there are ways to overcome, and one of the ways that you can overcome is to have just such a significant recognition of your name and of your brand that it doesn't really matter what they do. I don't know how many of you all know this, but Obama was cheated by the DNC. They did not want him. I don't say they didn't want him to win as much as they really, really, really wanted Hillary Clinton to win. The superdelegates actually primarily went to Hillary Clinton until the very, very, very end, when Howard Dean, when he used to be fair, pleaded for them to just go ahead and get behind Obama, because he was the one that was going to get the people excited. He was going to be the one to help the Democrats take back over, and he did at that point in time. And it would have been, huge and momentous for the Democratic Party wielding that image going forward, and they used his image going forward. So they've cheated for Hillary in the past, but sometimes, like, weird events and anomalies happen, like getting 99% of the black vote. That will never happen again in history, right? But it happened with Obama, and people were pissed. Like, if he would have lost, there are some black people who would have been too pissed to vote for Hillary because of the things that she had said during that election. And so they knew better, and they found out that whatever they did that time was the right thing because Obama won. And they screwed Bernie up this time. They screwed Bernie. They screwed the constituents that voted for him. And look at what the result was. Once you cheated him, it was inevitable. So that name recognition that Bernie Sanders have and that immense popularity does have a good opportunity, or does give him a good opportunity to actually break through the cheating, because I do know they're going to cheat. But we see the superdelegate struggle right now, right? As it currently stands, they don't get to vote until the second, until there's a clear tie at the convention. We see that California pushed its primary up, which means that Kamala Harris, who we know is going to run, is going to be exposed very, very, very early. And if she loses her state, that's going to take her out of the running. She would drop out. Cory Booker doesn't have a chance. Joe Biden, people really forget he was actually in that election. He was in that primary in 2008, but he was so boring and forgettable that everybody forgot. He's not charismatic. Don't believe the hype that the memes have tried to portray. It's so when you see Kamala Harris, because she's going to be a part of the California's second Super Tuesday, she's going to be exposed immediately. All of California going to be like, oh nah, this bitch got to go. She's all about, she takes all kinds of money from the prison industrial complexes, bailed out banks, against single payer healthcare. Everything that you could think of that represents progressivism. They have a long track record of Kamala Harris not representing that. So she's going to be gone, and that would probably be his biggest competition unless Elizabeth Warren ran. She's the only other one that I think that could potentially give her Bernie trouble, but maybe in the Northeast, because definitively he would win all the South. At this very moment, I believe that Bernie Sanders would win all the South with the current lineup. But so it's going to be interesting though. And I'm more concerned, believe it or not, about his cabinets. Because think about it, his administration, we saw what happened with Obama. Obama was like, oh, I don't like this girl, but she, everybody's telling me that I should just let her choose my administration because she knows what's best and her experiences should be valued. And then look what happened.
Well, one counter that I do have for that is that Obama was a junior senator, had not been in the game that long. Bernie Sanders presumably has been there for a long time, very long time. He knows who is who.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he would know the background of these people, even if the Democratic Party is pushing for somebody. I would hope that he would, be smart enough to know that, this person is definitely catering to Wall Street. I'm not going to select this person to be a member of my cabinet.
I hope that he goes outside of politicians.
Yeah, ideally.
I want him to have some academics, some experts who actually work in the field on the ground.
He did. His economic advisor was somebody who was a huge proponent of
MMT.
MMT, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And she was an academic, and so I would hope that he would kind of follow along those lines and continue with people that are not, big money people in Washington.
Yeah. And I hope that whoever he brings in economically can find out how we can transition, because I don't want to break anybody's heart if you're one of those hardcore MMTers. But yeah, in order for MMT to work, we have to essentially stay in perpetual warfare for the rest of our existence, because MMT is based off of the petrodollar. That is how our sovereignty, our economic sovereignty is maintained. Like any other type of sovereignty in regards to international or comparative politics, right? I don't know if people know that, but that's kind of how sovereignty works. Is your military big enough to stop me from going into your country, or are you allied with someone whose military is big enough? That's pretty much how sovereignty works, right? The reason that they will not allow Palestine to be a sovereign nation recognized by the UN is because there's certain rights you get when you can defend yourself, or you have other people defend you. They will never want that for Palestine, because then you're going to have obviously their conflict of interest with their whole Israeli occupation. But when you're like Saudi Arabia, who is also representing the United Nations, they're literally bombing people. They're literally just bombing the shit out of people. Yeah. But it's like what's his name? Wesley Clark. Yeah, General Wesley Clark, when he started listing off the 7 nations, all those nations are oil rich, except for a couple. But if they aren't oil rich, they were poised to be part of the Arab Union that was going to be headed by Gaddafi, actually. And they were going to create a currency that was backed up by oil and gold. It's going to be called the gold dinar. And why do you think that we went into all these individual nations? Because we didn't want, if they use their oil for themselves, that's what happened. We lose, our dollar drops tremendously, and they potentially become the leading superpower. I mean, are you familiar with Mossadegh in Iran in the 1951?
I actually watched a documentary about that like a few months ago. It was super interesting, but it's refreshed my memory because I know that I watched the documentary about it.
Long story short, he was like, yo, we're going to nationalize our oil. At the time, Iran was our #1 ally in weapons trade. And like, that's what we actually used to launch our military assaults out of Iran. And Mossadegh came in and said, we're going to nationalize our oil. And we were like, oh, nope, he got to go. He's a terror. He's a communist. He's a communist. Get him out. We used the CIA to infiltrate. We initiated a PSYOP that said that he was a communist and that he was a dictator. And he was gone just like that. Once again, just revalidating. Like, that's why Russia wanted the Eastern Bloc back. That's why we put Israel in the Middle East and threatened to not join the UN if we didn't get that, despite the rest of Europe and a lot of the states either not caring about what was going on with Israel. Like, they just didn't care, unfortunately. And some of them were avidly against it because they knew exactly why we wanted Israel there. So you just can't be the #1 empire in the world without the #1 resource. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm hoping that, if there's anything that I don't want to, I'm conflicted because I don't want us to be this giant superpower with all this military might and continuing to overthrow regimes, democratically elected regimes, for heaven's sakes. Where we're going to say, hey, we're spreading democracy. No, we're not.
No, we're not. It's literally no. And Mattis actually came out and said very clearly and straight up, we came up with all these reasons as to why, but no, it's economic competition. Yeah. That's why we're going to these. He said this in a damn press conference. It was really weird. I don't know why he said it, but I thought he maybe thought that he would get support if people just knew the real reason why. But Mad Dog Mattis, it was reported by the Real News Network. Wow. I want to say by Ben Norton. I think it was him that posted it. But either way, he literally said, "Yeah, we're not going to lie. We're not going to come up with we're engaging with these nations because of economics and competition. That's why."
And so, if hopefully we can be, pushed down and no longer be a superpower, I'm conflicted because I know that's going to cause this economic strife in the country. And
the moment we shift off of oil, why do you that's why we don't 100% shift off of oil right now. We would be an economic juggernaut by pursuing renewable. We would create good God, millions of new jobs. People would be enrolling in school or in trade programs at a ridiculous rate because they have to obviously know how to work these. Vehicles would obviously make huge transitions where people have to learn how to fix those. So now you're creating more new jobs. Small businesses would be able to take advantage. People would be able to invest. The numbers would be exponential, and yet we're pretending as if we can't do it for some reason. Our dominant, why do you think that Hillary absolutely refused to give up fracking? Why would we be so focused on fracking when it's totally unnecessary for us in our survival? Yeah. It's because that petrodollar that's why we put Venezuela on the Muslim ban list. The moment that Venezuela dropped the dollar, went to cryptocurrency, Trump, right under everybody's nose, literally nobody knew, put Venezuela weirdly on the Muslim ban list. And people don't know that though. Yeah. So we can literally spend as much money as we want to. Absolutely. It's true. Right now in our current economic state, we can do what the hell we want to, when we want to, when it comes to our money, which is why it's weird that they will drop $700 billion on military. And we say, well, can we have just $2 billion for healthcare? Oh no, we can't afford that. Nah. But it's that, like, the fact that we're spilling all this blood, the least that we can have is healthcare
Yeah,
for
you
our
think.
people. You would think, right? The least that we can have is education, maybe daycare for the kids, you
Yeah.
know, something, at least guarantee sustenance. But no, and it's because in order for that military industrial complex to work, you have to keep feeding it. So you need people to need education, like, and need a way to pay for it.
Right.
You need people to feel patriotic and, you know, feel, oh wow, $700 billion, that's clearly going to the military, right? Oh no, they don't even want the military climbing out. Why do you think they only gave 1% raises? Even when Obama tried to give a 4% raise, they gave 1%. After approving at that time, I want to say like 500,000 or 600,000 military budget. 1% raise, less than 1.5% goes to the military, like the actual personnel of that
Yeah.
budget, which is insanity. And the reason why is because if you're making 4% more and every year you're getting a 3 to 4% increase, which makes sense, then all of a sudden you can start saving up. Your same reason they don't give you $15 to $20 minimum wage, because then you start saving your money. You start pursuing other opportunities. I have to bring somebody else in to replace you, which costs money. I have to train someone else new, which costs money. I want you here. I don't want you out there. Like, that's what it comes down to.
Yes, I want you locked into my healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
Especially what if you have a health condition, or your family, someone in your immediate family has a health condition. Well, if you pursue a new job, that becomes
Mm-hmm.
fuzzy. You could be on a 3-month probationary period where you don't get healthcare until it kicks in 3 months later. You know what I mean? Until they don't
Yep.
pay for healthcare. And so that's another reason why they don't assure healthcare to citizens, because they
Yep.
don't want you to be mobile. They don't want you to have actual economic opportunity. They want you to be working for these corporations. It's
Yeah.
it's horrific how America does actually treat its people. As you mentioned, we hope that somebody could do this transitionary, would be smart enough to be able to do this transitionary period, because, as you said, we're able to spend endless money on whatever we want. So that would be a great opportunity to start initiating these programs and winding down that military might. You know what I mean? So that we can start moving off that petrodollar. Because
Yeah.
let's just face it cannot last forever. Nothing does.
Yeah. It can. And it's, I mean, and if it's going to take this to make it last forever, then it's not worth it.
Exactly.
Like,
And
and I know it makes people uncomfortable to think about. Like, nobody really wants to think about the fact that, like, yeah, we can spend money on whatever we want to, and nobody really ever asks, well, why is that?
mhm.
You know, like, no, because people just kind of like believe these theories, and they never ask why the theories exist. In any well, not any econ class, but I had a really good econ professor where when we talked about MMT, and he works for the UN, and that was like one of the first things that he's like, yes, we have sovereign currency. Yes, we have a fiat currency, but it is not without cost. Like, it's the same reason our country is able to maintain sovereignty. It's consistent with every other international, with all other international interactions when it comes to politics. There is always a price to be paid. Our sovereignty comes from our military might, as well as any other countries. So how do you believe that you can maintain economic sovereignty? You know, same thing. If you have the ability to control economics, whatever lead economic, what one point it was gold, where we were dominated in, and now it's oil because there's more of it, and obviously we're fighting and maneuvering and even allying, all the way back to Great Britain allying with a lot of the Middle East and controlling the Middle East, in the late 1800s, whenever oil started becoming more popular. We have the same exact allies now, like that they started having in the 1800s. But there's always a price to pay. When you have control, like, how do you maintain your borders? By having control of the strongest military. How do you maintain your economy? By having control of the strongest resource that's tradable or usable, and that's it. That is it for the time being. So there's always a price to be paid, which is unfortunate. I really hope soon, but it's scary too, because like we could cause an economic collapse because we've been so entrenched in the petrodollar.
Right. And
So
so if we start moving away from that, or being, because at some point, I hope that at some point the U.S. will be held accountable for their actions because they have committed several war crimes. We know this. I mean, it's been proven, and sanctions should be applied on the U.S. Of course,
But who's going to apply them?
Exactly, who's going to apply them?
IMF, that's ours.
Right, exactly.
World Bank, that's ours.
We own
WTO, World Trade Organization, that's ours.
Yeah.
EU, we pay for that shit.
But what I'm seeing in the world right now is that people are starting to create new alliances. Maybe they'll have another thing that is owned by something else that will hold the United States accountable. Of course, then they may become a problem, with their military might and things like that, and they may end up being like we were or are currently.
That's why I feel like, I know this might seem like very commonsensical and simple. Has anybody just decided, hey, maybe we should actually just sit down and try to work shit out? like if we just get one leader who says, y'all, look, I can't make up for the last 150 years or 70 years specifically, where we literally destroyed all of, Laos and half of Vietnam and carpet bombed North Korea and controlled every economy on the planet one way or the other. I can't make up for that. But what I can say is, y'all are bad. Let's work together. Let's get our economies all back on the same page so we can start having a more engaging and more equal trade system and international economic system that works for everybody. So nobody's going to create terrorists when they got a PlayStation at their house. They can afford to put food on the table. They got a job to go to. War isn't necessary when everybody is eating, essentially.
Yeah, and everybody's taken care for. If they don't feel like they're lacking in some great way, which we could end world hunger today if we so decided to do so. It's a good question. Why don't we just sit down and work it out? And I guess it's just this general mistrust of each other.
Well, it's a greed thing.
We can't do that because someone else is going to strike us. Then you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's propaganda also. Once we dropped that bomb, we could have stopped everything. That would have been the end of all perpetual warfare. If you're thinking about the documentary that I'm thinking about, you're familiar with Truman and how him and not Gorbachev, was it Gorbachev? I think it was Gorbachev. No. Him and Stalin met. And Stalin was like, yo, so we still got the agreements from the Yalta conference, right? Like, I get these countries. I know FDR is dead, but we had an agreement. And your boy, Mr. Churchill was there. And then Truman was like, oh, no, that never happened.
Wow.
And Stalin's like, nah, it definitely happened. Truman's like, nah, it never happened. Stalin calls up Churchill like, yo, you need to tell your mans that y'all gave me that land. And Churchill's like, oh, what? Huh? What? Huh? What? I don't know what you're talking about. And then like 20 years later, he finally admitted that, yeah, he didn't, because they never wanted Russia to have Turkey, because Turkey is the entrance into the Middle East. And then then Russia already has, they border with Iran and a couple of other nations. And so that would have actually put almost like a lock on the entire oil supply, or at least most of the oil supply that was known to the world at the time. And then later on, Gorbachev tried to totally end all tension between Russia and the United States, even to the extent that he almost begged Reagan in public on camera to end it. And Reagan just said, I'm sorry, and got into the car. These leaders have wanted to end tensions with us. Putin doesn't want to fight with us. Putin, in my opinion, has more compassion than any of our leaders over the last couple of decades, and is demonstrated by the very fact that he hasn't launched a single nuclear weapon at us. And I mean that. I'm not joking. Or even a unenriched, because we were shooting unenriched uranium projectiles with the 50 calibers in Iraq. He doesn't treat our soldiers like that. Not from any stories that I've heard, not while I was in or before that. He hasn't gone on a full-scale war and just directly attacked the bases that we have created in any given nation. And that's because he knows that it's not the people's fault. It's not the ones who are innocent fault. He understands, like, you cannot hold innocent people accountable for their controlling and greedy leaders.
Right.
Like, so he's not going to initiate. He would never initiate a sanction on Cuba, trying to say that, oh, we're punishing Fidel Castro. You get what I'm saying? That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
It only hurts everybody. Same thing with Iran. He would not initiate sanctions on Iran, trying to get out whatever leader is not doing whatever the U.S. says at the time, because that only hurt the people of Iran. The rich people are going to be rich regardless. So I don't buy this idea that, I mean, granted, nobody really has a reason to trust the United States. That I do believe, but I don't buy the idea that every world leader is inherently evil and just has this desire to overthrow every government that they see, every institution that they see.
Yeah, I don't buy that one bit. I can't believe people do, you know, because nobody, even if somebody is just even have the desire, like the minute desire to do that, that doesn't mean that they are in and of themselves inherently evil, and that's only the side of them that we should focus on. You know, we should always look at the big picture and always look at, you know, take a holistic approach. I know that it doesn't create that nice little dichotomous, you know, good versus evil type of thing.
Yeah, that Hegelian, like, oh yeah, the oversimplification, right, of the idea of good and evil.
Right, which honestly we do default to a lot of the time. I mean, we go with it's everywhere in our culture, all the way from like team sports, you know. Hey, you know, no team is good or bad inherently, you know, but my team has to win because they're
except for the Cleveland Browns. They're pretty bad. The Cleveland Browns are they're pretty bad. But no, you're right though. You're right.
You know, I mean, we were structured so to believe that from, you know, the time we start participating in those team sports all the way to adulthood. So it's really hard. It's hard to get out of that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they're trying to remove critical thinking from studies. They don't.
I feel like they already have.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of states I know they have, but I know a lot of states are working on it, and yeah, they definitely have, but I don't even think in some ways they meant to. I think sometimes it depends on the state too. Obviously, in the South, yeah, kind of like totally overrun. Critical thinking is frowned upon. I know in some areas, like a lot of the schools in the county that I went to school in, like if you're smart, like then it was considered lame. I don't think it was that. I was like, hold on, being intelligent and making sure that I can, you know, think critically and get into college and support myself when I get older and my family. That's stupid. I don't know about that. I'm not gonna buy that. But
right?
Say what?
It's elitist, right?
Yeah, it is elitist though. There is some elitism to that.
But that's looked as negative, right? It's elitist. You know, you've got your nose up in the air. You can't kind of understand where we're coming from.
Yeah.
You're too far here. You're too far gone, or something.
That's what they tell you. I had somebody on Facebook tell me. He actually said, am I racist for believing that black people can be just as racist as white people? And I was like, no, you're not. First of all, what? Like, how is that racist at all? I don't even know if you understand the actual basic definition of racism, even the dictionary one. But I was like, no, it just probably means you don't understand the academically peer-reviewed, accepted definition of racism. And that's whatever. If you're willing to understand that, that's a different discussion. But if you just posted this to have some reconfirmation or reaffirmation of whatever ignorant beliefs you hold, then just say that. Don't pose it as an inquiry. Like, just say you believe this and you're not willing to change your mind. And then he's like, he literally attacked me. How do you know? I was like, well, I mean, outside of the fact that I studied this extensively in college and I read article upon journal upon, like, you know, it's outlined pretty thoroughly in a lot of studies. And he's like, well, this is the dictionary definition. I'm like, so we're going to go with the half-baked, oversimplified, watered-down definition given by the dictionary just so people can have a basic understanding of what it is, instead of the peer-reviewed, I dedicated my life to studying this.
Right.
definition. Like people have dedicated their lives to defining this and understanding it and determining what the definition is. Because I mean, that's kind of what the dictionary is. Like a bunch of people say, we cool with this, and somebody was like, yeah. And then the guy actually said that because of my education or because of other people's education, that they're no longer like that's a knock on them. They don't actually understand what racism is because they're educated, which doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah,
but it's a common thing now.
That, to be perfectly honest, I've not encountered that yet. I probably will at some point.
Yeah.
But that makes no sense to me. You could also, whenever I get pushed back as far as like what is racism and book definition, I go, it's also how it's applied too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like a thought. It has to be exhibited in some way. Otherwise, how would you know, right?
Yeah, nah, definitely. And the idea, I mean, you gotta think. It's when somebody says, well, black people can be racist or can't be racist. You got to be like, okay, so first of all, what are you trying to imply? Are you saying that they are being hateful? Because there are words to describe the things that you're saying, but it's not racism. They can be bigoted. Black people can be bigoted. Black people can be prejudiced. Black people can be discriminatory. But the word racism was created after all of those ideas already existed. All of those concepts already existed. And what racism was, it was understanding that those concepts can be unequally administered or applied by one particular group because of the power that they hold in society, because of their skin tone. Like, that is what racism is. It is the element of power that comes with it. Like, so if a black person, for whatever reason, has some disdain towards white people in general, which I hope that nobody has any type of generalization, a general disdain towards anybody like that. But that does exist, especially in the South. The reason is, you think they just woke up one day and say, oh, I hate all white people? No. They know their past. They've seen their family treated a particular way, or themselves have been treated a particular way by a white person. They know the history of Jim Crow in their area. I mean, hell, in North Carolina, I used to live near what's that county? Guilford. Yeah, Guilford County, which didn't end segregation until like the 80s. Like, they didn't end segregation in schools until the 80s, and their schools still look highly segregated because it's still like they're trying to catch up. Right. Like, they're aware of these things. So there's this like innate and inherent distrust for the ability of those particular people. Like, what if that person does do me wrong? Will they be held accountable? What if I and that person were going for the same job and I was better qualified? Would I get it over them? History has shown that that's not necessarily the case. Right. And so that is where the nuance comes into play.
Right. There's definitely reasoning, because there is a historical path that can't be ignored, right? And that still does play out through modern day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a complicated issue, but it's not coming out of nowhere.
But I think any complicated issue, any complex issue, which is the point about education, is like, whenever you don't know a lot about that particular issue and you're just trying to render an opinion, like, if you're confident and why don't you read and understand and learn more about that particular concept? Like, I feel like that would be any concept that I feel like I understand to whatever degree. I'm like, oh, let me read more about it to make sure that I can understand it, to make sure that I can explain myself.
Because that takes a lot of work, and people aren't interested in doing that.
Right? I think it's a lot of uncomfortability too.
Right. Whomever came up to you about that particular issue, it seemed like they were kind of saying, well, if blacks are racist, I should be able to be racist. I mean, that's kind of how, like,
I think they were saying, if I can be called a racist, they should be able to be called racist too. I think that's more so what it was like. It was one of those people from, how the Midwest is, like, they're all about progressivism until you bring up race.
Right.
Like, these are all like hardcore Bernie supporters until you're like, well, yeah, somebody said something racist. Oh, so all white men are racist? Wait, whoa, bro, you just made this really weird. Nobody said that. But
I mean,
but
why do I? The only reasoning that I have for people to do that, because I cannot wrap my head around it otherwise, and maybe you have a better justification, or is that they themselves are racist.
they have probably at some point expressed racist views that they didn't think were racist at the time, because we're all victims of the patriarchy in some way, form, or fashion. Just like there are males where the moment you speak about sexual assault, and you're like, majority of males have committed sexual assault, whether or not they've done it, right? And or whether or not they think they have, excuse me. And oh my God, I did a video about that, and I've never seen so many guys come on. No, maybe you committed sexual assault, but I've never done that. I've never. Maybe you did it, and that's why you're speaking about it. Man, I was like, wow, I've never seen this many guys comment on my video at all. Like, and it was all like the same weird, like between the ages of maybe 25 and 40. Almost all of them, were kind of like upper middle class to middle class white guys. It was really weird. And the women all noticed it immediately. I noticed it, but I wasn't gonna say nothing. But they all noticed it, like, okay, there's a lot of projection going on here.
Right.
Okay. Like, everybody bring it back in, because everybody has committed some type of prejudice, discrimination, some type of act where you've infringed on someone else's persons. Like, it's okay. Just admit it. It's fine. Nobody's mad at you for, like, I don't give a shit if you're racist or not. Just don't be racist when you're trying to hire my ass. Don't be right. I don't care if you're sexist or not. Just don't be sexist when you're applying, punishment or judging whether or not someone should be tried for rape or not. Like, everybody has biases. Everybody, because that's how we're raised. But because we're really all victims of the patriarchy, and we're all limited by our experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the moment well, if I didn't grow up around Black people, if I didn't grow up around that, have that experience at all, nor am I friends with anybody who had any significant experience in that department, maybe I should just be more willing to open up my mind and listen. And even if I disagree, at least I have a better understanding, instead of saying, no, you're absolutely wrong. You're just being racist. You're not listening. You're race baiting. Like, if you are a type of person that hasn't been raised around women, or you've been raised to see women a certain way, maybe you should just be more willing to be like, oh, well, maybe I'm saying some pretty sexist stuff, or I'm behaving in a chauvinistic way, and I don't know.
Well, because it's challenging them. It's challenging them to open their mind to the fact that they could be viewed as, or that they could have done something that is traditionally viewed as very negative in our society, right? Like, sexual assault, very negative connotation, obviously, and it should. And then you have to say, well, I have to take ownership of that. You know what I mean?
Because they judge so harshly that they're worried. Well, the problem is those people usually judge so harshly that they're worried at some point that they will be judged in the same light.
Well, yeah, it's possible.
And weirdly enough, the ones who judge the harshest usually are the ones doing the most.
Right? That's something I've noticed too.
Republican Party. Speaking of which, I want to cover one more topic before we go. What do you think about this walk away movement?
Okay, so I've heard or read two things about this. One, walk away to the right, right? It's kind of like the dim exit that happened earlier.
Well, see, I don't even like comparing the two, because dim exit was strictly about leaving the Democratic Party.
Right. Well, the walk away movement was it, or I guess is, trying to get people not only to leave the Democratic Party though, but to leave progressivism for the right.
That's what that's what the vibe you're getting to, right? So I'm not crazy.
I'm getting that from. And then I hear another layer, and maybe you've seen this too. Oh, those are Russian bots.
Yeah, that's recent though. I've heard that recently. Yeah, that was really. Okay. Yeah, I read that article and I was like, oh God. Yeah, my eyes too. I was like, this is what we're doing right now. This is what we're doing. We got a very serious issue going on in this country, and so then you say, probably Russian bots. No, there are people who did. Now, here's my thing about the walkaway movement. I know that there are some progressives who literally just relate that to leaving the Democratic Party, and they correlate that with nothing on the right. However, I am not in that camp of people who like ignore all the facts just because it doesn't really fit with my narrative about something, right? So like the fact of the matter is this guy Brandon Straka was on Fox News talking about this, and they just were uninterrupted. They were so supportive. It was the problems of the left, the intolerance of the left, the corruption of the Democratic Party, the intolerance of the Democratic Party, identity politics of the left. I'm like, for someone to be conflating all those problems within the left, like as one problem, like saying that because there are problems on the left. He didn't actually mention the very serious ones, like the splintered, like there is some identity politics that's played by like the actual legitimate progressive left. They don't even realize they're playing them half the time. It's just very identity centered politics that they play, though. When they're trying to figure out which issue should be dealt with first, they kind of go into their own little groups of oppression and say that my issue should be dealt with first. That is something that gets played by the left. But the Democrats are not left for the most part. So pretending that Hillary Clinton, who has literally voted with every neoconservative policy that there is to vote for, is left, is laughable. You know, and to not ever once at all mention the right, to not ever once at all critique, like, because this dude is gay, right? Okay, you say, oh, the intolerance of the left, bro. They are literally trying to stop you from getting married to who you want to get married to in the Republican Party. Not all of them, but most of them. Yeah. Right? You don't have a problem with that intolerance? That's not an issue for you? And if he said into independence, if he said, you know, to be more of a populist, I would probably agree with him, because I don't consider populists on the left or the right. I kind of consider them, we're just our own thing. And it's a sentiment that I think is growing across the country. But this dude is he's literally an actor. He's on IMDb. I'm not exaggerating. He's on IMDb. His very first role was a reporter. His appearance on Judge Pirro, like, is listed on IMDb. Like, it's part of his resume now. Wow. Yeah. It's an act. Yeah. And once you can't, because a lot of those people, right, who are like bolstering the walkaway movement, they're like super anti-establishment media. They're the same ones who screamed that, oh, look, Ocasio was at some point interviewed by CNN or MSNBC or whatever, so therefore she's absolutely not on our team. And yet Brandon Straka was literally on Fox News, which is also establishment as shit. And they're like, that's different though. Right. Where's the consistency?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it seems like it's trying to, again, get you to move right, right?
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was crazy. I'm like, I know what dim exit is. Dim exit isn't let's move right. In some cases, actually, take that back. In most cases, dim exit means we're going further left.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And with dim exit, we were critiquing the Democratic Party, saying that you're too much like these establishment Republicans and neocons. That's why we're leaving you.
I feel like they're coming a little late. This we move, you know.
The walkaway movement.
The walkaway, move right movement. Just because of the dim exit. I mean, we've already kind of.
You've been there.
Yeah, exactly. We're done it. You know, people that have wanted to leave the Democratic Party have already done so, but they have not necessarily moved to the right. They've kind of said, you know what, I'm more of a populist, or I am more left than the Democratic, and they have no interest in.
And there were a plethora of people who they could have brought on to speak about the dim exit movement on Fox News. They didn't, they're everywhere. Because guess what they're going to say? Oh, well, why are you leaving? Why are you dim exiting? Because they're too much like y'all. because they propped up Donald Trump. Like, they're not gonna let you say that on Fox News.
Yeah, because
Like,
they're Republicans. Because that's exactly what I said. Because to me, they are Republicans and they don't represent me.
yeah, exactly. I mean, literally, Hillary was a Republican. Joe Biden was, for all intents and purposes, a damn Republican in every policy that he's like. He was part of the 3-strike rule. He was the one who pushed that legislation through committee to get it passed. Yes. Like, they are not representative of the progressive left or the populist movement, which I believe the populist movement is more important than any movement in this country right now. But so I'm glad I'm not crazy, because I'm like, people are like, no, but not everybody, because there's some videos where they're like, I'm just leaving the Democratic Party and I want to become an independent, which is cool, right? That's nice that some people interpret it like that. But that is not the same thing as what it is. The guy who created the shit, like, who announced that he was creating it on Facebook, by the way, and he didn't say, I'm becoming an independent. What he said was, I'm looking for other conservatives who are gay. Like, that's what he said on his Facebook to bolster this movement. Yeah, other conservatives, not other independents, not other populists, not other progressives, but other conservatives specifically who are gay, to bolster this movement.
Okay, wow.
Why would you leave? Like, you're telling me the moment that you left the Democratic Party, all of a sudden you stopped being for single payer healthcare? You stopped being pro-choice? You stopped fighting for equal wages? That just is unimportant to you now? Like, every other progressive policy you can think of. It's not whether or not those policies are even right or wrong at this point. It's saying you're that malleable. You have so few convictions. Your conviction is that weak that on a whim, because you decide to join the party way too late, right? Because if he's like, well, I just noticed that Hillary Clinton and Democrats are corrupt, like yesterday. Like, okay, that's your fault. We know who the progressives are. You left because you thought that everybody on the left was Hillary Clinton, and that shows how your ignorance of the actual left. But whether or not those policies are right or wrong, how much conviction can you really have to say on a whim, because somebody showed you one video, because that's what he claimed on Fox News, somebody showed him one video. All of a sudden, I don't believe in anything I used to believe in. I believe only in this now. That's lazy as shit. That's lazy and opportunistic.
Yeah, it's lazy, opportunistic, and you have to, Addie, hush. Sorry, my dog is barking.
It's
you have to go to the point where, like, how much were you paid? Right?
Actor.
How much were you paid? Right, an actor. Because you may have convictions, whatever they be, but were you ever even a part of the Democratic Party? You know, were you ever a part of the left at all? I mean, I could see them being a part of the Democratic Party because they're Republicans, but, you know, outside of that, you know, like, people that are moving right and then hard right, I mean, it's not that hard.
Yeah, it's not hard. It's easy, actually.
To go from super left to hard right, which is, I mean, that's a huge step.
It's hard. Like for me, that would be hard because I have like this thing called a conscience. But economically, it's the easiest thing in the world to do.
Right. And
like, look at all the, like, being look at Candace Owens. If I became Candace Owens, like, hey, black people, it's y'all fault. I don't even know why. Like, I would be rich as hell because I'm much more charismatic than Candace Owens is. And if I'm going to lie about the plight of black people and ignore the Republicans being concluded in the plight of black people, I can do it much better than she can because I'm actually educated. So, but hey, you know, I would rather stick to the truth, no matter how inconvenient it may be for either side of the fence.
What they're doing is dangerous to me.
It is.
It's dangerous. And it's like, do you want to sell out at the expense of so many other people? Because you are going to basically say, it is okay, you know, as a gay man, and to be persecuted by the Republicans.
Yeah.
It's okay if we lose our rights to marry or lose our rights to, you know, have.
What happens when the Supreme Court overrules the marriage equality law? What happens if you think that he would all of a sudden, oh shit, I forgot, they're intolerant of shit too? Or would he keep riding that wave and try to justify it or ignore it? Like, there's a lot of people that, like Candace, like Joe Rogan brought up some of the things that Trump has done wrong. And they're like, she's like, oh, and like just keeps talking like that didn't happen. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. you can't just ignore like, oh, what about like the things in Yemen? Yeah, man, nah, that's cool. Well, I mean, but Hillary though, like, and I'm me, I'm all about accountability, but I'm about accountability, not she's not on my team or he's not on my team or she or he is on my team, so I'm not going to call them out.
Right. Can I mention that there are people on the left that do that are pretty prominent too?
Oh no, 100%.
Like, because they're angry at
definitely more on the left.
Angry at what
the Trump
happened
derangement
with
syndrome.
And
oh yeah.
Like and so they're like, ignoring anything that the Republican Party is doing at this point, and then going,
Well,
they did that. So why is it that they can do this, with this investigation or with here, but they can't do it with them? I'm like, because you're creating a false equivalency. That's why.
Yeah, it's like, nah, Trump is definitely doing quid pro quo. Like, he got caught like allowing Chinese ambassadors to stay at his hotel. Like, he can't do that. That is super illegal. While he's a president or while he's occupying any federal office, actually. That's illegal as shit. Like, and people were like, nah, but it's not a big deal. But if that was Hillary, y'all would be all over her. God knows these Republicans who are literally in the camp of, can you believe Ocasio had a 3-bedroom house for 5 people? How many bedrooms does she need? She's not even really middle class. Like, I was like, yo.
And it's like rich people that are doing that.
Exactly. Who inherited their money? That's what's crazy about it. It was insulting because it was almost as if, and I didn't really think about it until somebody brought it up to me. It's like, yo, it's almost as if they're saying there's no way that this Puerto Rican girl from the Bronx, this woman of color, this young grassroots, that she could ever be where she is unless somebody paid for her to get there.
Right.
Like, and I'm talking about, they were saying it's not about the right coming at her, because we expected the right to come, but like the progressives who were echoing it. And I was like, yo, that's a little bit too, that's heavy, because it kind of is very emblematic of what we have seen in the past. Like, the only way that a lot of Black people in the party get elevated is by selling out, unquestionably. Like, I'm not naive to that. And it's because of the way the party is set up. And Democrats are by and large pretty racist. Like, it's not an exaggeration. When people say the Dems are racist, I'm like, yeah, that's actually true. But on the other side of that coin, Colin Powell came out on television and said, oh no, hell no, my party's racist as hell. It's like, they don't have a problem with Obama's policies. They have a problem with him. Yeah. Colin Powell said this. He's a hero to the Republicans.
Yeah.
And so to pretend that you can say, like Candace Owens can say and would be 100% right, there's a lot of racism that's perpetuated within the Democratic Party. You're absolutely right. Okay, and? Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, no, it's just a lot of racism going on with the Democratic Party. Okay, yeah, okay, and? Well, no, but, Black people should pull themselves out of the party and then go where? Like, and then she's working for Charlie Kirk, who literally fired his second in command because she got caught on a group of employees in a text message with a group of employees where she literally said, I hate all Black people. I don't care. F them all. I hate them. And Charlie Kirk comes out and obviously has to fire her because it became public, but comes out and says, we need more people in the world like her.
Yeah.
Like, what? And what makes it weird is that that there has been a culture fostered there that made her so comfortable and so bold, where she thought her text was not going to get out to anybody.
Right.
Dead serious. She thought her text was not going to get out to anybody. And she just could not comprehend that. Hold on. We have a super chat from Justin B. Said, talk about the Green Party candidates running in 2018. Look at the names that you put in the chat. And then he also said, if you're in a state with a Green Party, help start one or work on a Green Party campaign. Together we can win. You all know how I feel about going third party. I'm all about it. Let me see what we can find where these candidates you listed, Justin. Kenneth Mejia. Oh, yeah, big one. Definitely. If Kenneth Mejia wins, which he is in a state, or he's in a district in California that is actually split half and half, Dem and Republican. And weirdly enough, right, he switches in the same place he ran before. he got obliterated by the Democratic candidate and didn't get to make it to the last election, to the general election. He switches to Green Party and makes it into the general election, getting way more votes than he did as a Democrat. And that happened, by the way, like in multiple areas in California. But if Kenneth Mejia wins in the U.S., if he wins, he will be in the U.S. House of Representatives and will be the first ever Green Party candidate to ever be in the U.S. House of Representatives at a national level. So definitely go to Kenneth's and donate and go check him out. Constance, I actually interviewed her lieutenant governor or her potential lieutenant governor for Ohio. So definitely go vote for Constance. I'm supposed to be getting her on the show here pretty soon. Rodolfo Berrigan and Laura Wells for U.S. Representative in California. I'm assuming those two also got through the jungle primary. Reyes Aguirre for Arizona. And I'm gonna go. We're gonna cut it off for there. But definitely go check them out. Constance and Reyes Aguirre and Kenneth Mejia. Go check those out. Thanks for the shout out, Justin. Yeah, like I said, people, you all know I am all about Green Party. I'm all about third parties. I'm all about we should have a green, red, and a blue party. Also, we should have more access, not less. But with that being said, I do want to make it very important for you all to know my stance on party politics in general. It almost don't matter right now. And when I say that, I mean, if you want some real change, we have to have a multi-pronged approach that includes, yes, fostering and cultivating other parties, but the infrastructure is the most important thing that we have to change. We need to learn who is on our commissions, our election boards and commissions, and start putting pressure on them. Start putting their feet to the fire. Start putting their names in the public domain. Start figuring out who they're connected to, and start having articles put out about those individuals and why they would be incentivized to vote against ranked choice voting, and why they would be incentivized to kind of, or to disallow like, why would you say, oh yeah, we can let third parties come on stage if these random biased polls that have very limited sample sizes tell us that 5% of the nation likes them? Like, how can a poll of 200 people determine if the rest of the nation likes them enough to want to see them debate? How do we know if the rest of the nation likes them if nobody knows who the fuck they are? Right.
I add that you mentioned ranked choice voting. Mm-hmm. I live in a city. Well, I live in Nashville, but there are currently just 3 people working on this, on trying to get ranked choice voting kind of initiated here, and I guess kind of like to be the standard here. And I mean, the city council is literally talking about it now with just 3 people reaching out to them about it. So that's how much power you have if you go and talk to your city council individually, or
and it's a movement,
as like these small groups.
Yeah, and it's a movement taking over too. Vermont, I think, is in the midst of finalizing it. Massachusetts is talking about it. Maryland's talking about it. I think Colorado is too. And if ranked choice voting gets pushed through, woo! Yeah, the game is changed. Yeah, the game is changed. And there's a lot of things that could converge right now. Which is why all this stuff requires multi-pronged approaches. We didn't get into this predicament with one decision, right? It wasn't one president, one congressperson, one senator. It wasn't one war. It wasn't one vote. It was a lot of things all converging at once that were being ignored. And now a lot of people see the problems, and people have been dedicated to fixing everything. So now, yes, if you are dim exit, that is a viable solution. Absolutely. If you are dim enter, absolutely. Because I am not one of those people who are ignorant enough to believe that we should leave the second most powerful party in the country, like, just to themselves so they can regroup and then come back even stronger. Right. Vegan for the Planet just said Maine actually has ranked choice voting now. So that's dope. So dim exit and dim enter are definitely necessary. The Green Party, cultivating it and strengthening that, absolutely necessary. Libertarian Party also going and just concentrating solely on ranked choice voting in your state. Abso-freaking-lutely. Advocating for marijuana legalization. Yes. It's bigger than you know because of the prison industrial complex and its ties into big tobacco and how they're able to stay in power because of the money that they get from tobacco by, you know, keeping marijuana out of the industry. Which you know, and then marijuana, obviously, the legalization props up small businesses and things like that. And ranked choice voting makes it so that these things are possible. Like, so all of these things are necessary. And not literally not one of those things is more important than the other. They're all necessary.
I bring that up because of the fact that so little people can actually influence in such a big way. And so I get a lot of questions, even through, you know, my little YouTube channel that I have. You know, how can I do something? How can I be more active? You know what? Go talk to your city council member. That's something that, you know, they will meet with you. They will meet with you at, you know, go get a coffee with them. Just do something very small, 30-minute talk, you know, if that's all you have. And you can influence their decisions just by doing, because nobody ever comes talks to them, believe it or not. They're just like, I never have anybody talk to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're really enthusiastic and excited.
Yeah, a lot of city council people are super. Yeah. And you have no idea, people, like city councils and commissions, like some cities have one commissioner, others have we have a board of commissioners in Miami. And those people like wield the power. Do you know why HB2 was actually passed in North Carolina? Because a bunch of little municipalities all said, we're going to make sure that if you're working in this city, if you're going to open up a small business in this city, you're paying people $15 an hour. And that's what HB2 was about. It was so that they control the minimum wage in North Carolina. The transgender bathroom thing was a smokescreen. It also made it legal to discriminate employment in North Carolina, which is why it kept getting beat by the Supreme Court. Along the way, it cost North Carolina a lot of money, billions actually. Like, we lost the All-Star game. We lost the NBA All-Star game. We lost Google. We lost Apple was going to build something there. We still have Monsanto though. How fortunate for us. But tell people where they can find you at, Amanda.
Again, I'm on YouTube at Actify Press. You can reach me there. You can also reach out to our Twitter at Actify Press. That's our handle as well. Or Actify Chat. We have two. You can reach my personal Twitter at Pand Activist.
Panda Activist?
Pand Activist.
Pand Activist. I don't know why I thought it was Panda Activist.
Well, it's the hodgepodge of both of those. Like Panda Activist, or because Panda.
Did I just shit on your attempt to be creative and crafty? My bad. I apologize.
No, it's cool. That was my attempt of being lazy, because I'm like, I don't want to have to do 2 A's.
It's kind of awkward, right? Being put together. Does anybody, and before we go, does anybody have any questions for Amanda before we head out of here? Give it a couple of seconds, but I want to thank you for coming on. First of all, greatly appreciate it. I know it's getting a little late, but I definitely wanted to hear your opinion on these things. And also, y'all at Actify Chat have been doing a fantastic job. And glad to have y'all on. And if anybody else wants to come on or anything like that, tell them to reach out to me. We can get them on as well. But give me 1 second to see if anybody has any questions for you.
Well, in the meantime, thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it, and I had a fun conversation with you.
You have fun? That's what's up. Yeah. Most people don't have fun talking about these things.
I talk about this stuff all the time, so.
That's good. So once again, people, make sure that you go and check out her channel. Go check out her YouTube. Go check out her Twitter. She's always arguing with people. It's hilarious. She's literally she'd be trolling the hell out of people. Like, when they try to overuse the term troll. Oh, you're just a troll. When referring to Amanda, they may be accurate. Like, if they say, oh, you're a troll, she would probably have to be like, well, okay, and
I'll own that.
So yeah, actually she does know about the case, Alan. We already talked about that. You're late to the party. Talking about the Laverne versus U.S. House of Representatives. Let me see. Oh, thanks, Jake. Jake actually put all your information from Actify on there on your Twitter. I think that's it, peeps. All right, cool. So thank you, Amanda, for coming on. Thank you all for joining us. And remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.